What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So as y'all know, today is indeed Wednesday, which means a new summit is now live here at Motorfest, and with that is going to be the Forest Quest. We're going to get ourselves the Lumberjack Rooftop, also the Lancia Stratos, and then finally some perf parts and 5,000 spare parts. If you are wondering, the Lumberjack Rooftop is going to be another old vanity from the Crew 2, so it's not going to be a new thing. And we are going to have the new monster truck coming out next week alongside the Yellow Spangled Nitro, $200,000 and 200,000 XP. Kind of funny whenever a vehicle is out, I know they are saving it, but it always seems to have the best stuff in it. I do gotta admit something, by the way, we all do know the Lumberjack Rooftop is going to be an old item. We also know the other smoke is. Why is it that the custom show seems to be getting some pretty cool stuff? For example, I did want to show this here quick, like looking at this. If we go over, guys, there's going to be a cool Monster Rock kit, which is going to be one of the audio signatures. I gotta admit, like, why can't some of this cool stuff be in the summits, man? I'm going to guess and say right now the biggest reason is they most likely don't have the stuff to put in everything, basically. So if you look at something in, like, let's say custom show or the summit, they probably only have so many items to put in there, which is probably why we keep seeing old stuff, because there are simply not enough new items to go around. At least that's my theory anyway. But looking at the summit here, we are going to have a good amount of events that I would say players might like and maybe they won't. We're going to have 2 Hypercar, we have a few Rally Raid, and also Rally as well. We're then going to have a Slalom for Rally Raid, Bullseye no restriction, and then a Slalom for Rally Raid as well, pretty much the other one, which is kind of odd because they're kind of the same thing. Before this, though, once again, you're not going to need a score breaker set. I basically ran a chemist on all of them. And funny part is, I was going to have skilled on every single one I tested it. And it wasn't even surprising, down to the fact that I basically got almost a maxed out score on every single skill without even using a score breaker. For this, though, the lovely bike that is going to have these skis on it is so dang good at the bullseyes that have water and land in it. So I would recommend trying out that bike on those. But the other slaloms really are going to be very straightforward. You are going to have to use the Peugeot on this one and also in the events as well. So probably want to get a tad used to that truck. With no pro settings, I would say it's a bit wonky. For the 2 events, you are going to have to use it. So for this one, it's basically a regular race here. Kind of the biggest thing is, if you are running no pro settings like I am, well, you are probably going to be prepared to most likely slide everywhere and not have the best time, because the Maxi doesn't have the best handling on it. And as always, I'm not using part sets, so I pretty much did every event with a live reward sniffer, which is not going to help the races whatsoever. But overall, though, this event is going to be fairly simple. For the other one, though, it is going to be one of the events where you basically have to start there, get to the end of it, but it's not going to have any checkpoints. You can kind of skip areas and go around different things. For this, guys, I kind of skipped around a few places. I know there's probably more of them, but to be honest, I really did not see a point of trying to find them. Like, sure, they're probably going to be there. There is probably going to be ways to be much quicker, but I looked at it and I went, you know what? I have around 122,000 points. I'm not going to jump in and try to get a higher score. I just honestly didn't really see the point there. When it does come to the rally event on the top here, though, this is going to be one of the races most players probably don't like, including one of the other events as well. But we'll get into that one here in a second. For this one, though, you are going to have to pretty much use one of your cars of your liking, which is going to be Rally Sports. For this, you're probably going to be like, oh, well, what should I use, man? Well, to be honest, I would say the T16 is fantastic, and also the Lancia 037 is probably great as well. So either one of those, I think, are going to be great options on it. For this, though, it is going to be one of the navigation races, so you can cut a few places, but it's pretty much going to be a fairly long event. Got 4 minutes, wasn't really trying to do great, and still managed to do pretty decent. But there is going to be a few areas that might honestly get annoying. The other event, though, I feel like might end up being kind of annoying to players is going to be the Abarth 124 Rally event here. This is going to be one of the off-road events. Specifically, the event, if you are wondering, well, which one is this? Well, heading into the activities and then pretty much head over to the off-roading addict playlist is going to be, oh, look, a boost! They added a boost! That's so cool, man. Only took them a little while. But my question is, why is it a 50% boost and not a 100% boost like the Grand Races? Weird, brother, weird. Okay, but anyway, looking at this playlist here, guys, the event you're going to notice that is going to be with the Abarth is the Car vs. Wild race there. So yeah, it's not going to be the kind of event you see a rally vehicle in, but the one thing I can definitely recommend on this race, though, is do be careful for the water because it is going to slow you down tremendously. Besides that, we're then going to have to do two different races here in the Z06 Corvette. The first one here, I would say, is going to be fairly straightforward. I mean, there's a lot of corners and stuff, and once again, I did not use any pro settings or part set, so I know I'm going to be slower than pretty much a lot of people, which honestly really doesn't bother me. I'm not really chasing the leaderboards, and I would say the Corvette's actually fairly decent for the most part. For the vehicle owned, again, it is going to be fairly straightforward, guys. Nothing too insane going on with these. The biggest thing is you probably just want to practice with the Z06 a bit, and that way you're probably going to be even faster. Besides all of that, though, I would say this summit's going to be fairly straightforward. It's not too bad. A lot of players will probably get it done in like an hour. I think I did end up getting this one done in like an hour and 5 minutes, so luckily I don't have to do it again. And it is going to get me a repeating reward of the Lumberjack Rooftop, which I kind of hope in the future they do end up doing something about that, man. Like, I just want to see new stuff to go after. As a returning player, it really makes me look at this game and go, all right, well, you could pretty much play the game for an hour a week, and if you have some of the rewards, you legit don't even need to log on. I kind of think that's a really big issue.